What if I told you? The serial killer who terrorized Long Island for over a decade wasn't a monster lurking in the shadows, but a respected Manhattan architect, a quiet father, living just 15 minutes from the beach where he buried his victims. This is the unsettling story of the Gilgo beach murders, a string of cold cases that haunted New York for 13 years. We'll trace the shocking digital breadcrumbs that led police to Rex Heuermann, the man accused of living a terrifying double life, an architect of buildings by day and an architect of evil by night. The investigation began not with the discovery of a body, but with a missing woman, Shannon Gilbert, who vanished in 2010. While searching for her, police made a horrifying discovery near Gilgo Beach. They found 4 women, all bound and wrapped in burlap, buried within a quarter-mile of each other. They became known as the Gilgo 4. Their disappearance dates range from 2007 to 2010. Authorities had the crime scenes and grim evidence, but no suspect. The case went cold, defined by police failure and the silence of the remote marshland. The burner cell phones used by the killer were the only lead. Chillingly, the murderer used one of these phones weeks after Melissa Barthelomy's death to make taunting, disturbing phone calls to her younger sister. He wasn't just killing. He was engaging in psychological terror. The police were forced to reckon with an offender who was confident, meticulous, and actively trying to derail their investigation. A dedicated task force created in 2020 was tasked with connecting the dots. They focused on cell tower data, finding the burner phones consistently pinged near 2 locations: Heuermann's Massapequa Park home and his Manhattan office. Even more crucial, police discovered Heuermann owned a specific dark green Chevrolet Avalanche pickup truck, a vehicle that a crucial witness had reported seeing near the scene when one of the victims, Amber Costello, disappeared in 2010. The digital fence was closing in. The final, unassailable evidence involved a piece of discarded trash. After 16 months of surveillance, detectives recovered a pizza crust Heuermann threw out in a trash can in Manhattan. From this piece of food, they were able to extract his DNA. This sample was then compared using new, highly sensitive whole genome sequencing, a cutting-edge technique, to hair found on the burlap used to wrap the victim Megan Waterman. The match was stunning, excluding 99.96% of the population. The circumstantial evidence became direct. An architect's dual life was exposed by a single pizza crust and a technological revolution in forensics. Further investigation revealed female hair found on multiple victims belonged to Heuermann's wife, who was proven to be out of state during the murders. Police theorized the hair was merely transferred from Heuermann's clothing, a haunting detail implying his own family was unwittingly living with the physical evidence of his crimes. The arrest of Rex Heuermann confirmed the dual life, but the why is rooted in the digital evidence found in his basement. Police found a methodical document, a chilling blueprint for murder, allegedly created by Heuermann himself. This document was a meticulous checklist of supplies, steps to avoid getting caught, and, most disturbing of all, notes referring to optimizing playtime. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a calculated, sadistic sexual compulsion driven by a desire for absolute power. The document outlined how to manage noise, avoid DNA, and even included a note allegedly reading, "Small is good," which prosecutors highlight as a direct reference to his victim's slight frames, implying his victim selection was carefully chosen for control. Furthermore, authorities recovered a massive, secret archive of his internet activity. This included thousands of searches for sadistic materials, child pornography, and images of the victims and their relatives. Heuermann wasn't just a killer. He was a methodical planner obsessed with both the acts of violence and the subsequent investigation. Searching for articles like, "Why could law enforcement not trace the calls made by the Long Island serial killer?" The timeline of terror is now believed to stretch back to at least 1993, indicating a decades-long secret life hidden by an architect who thought he had designed the perfect crime. This case confirms a chilling truth. The darkness we seek to uncover often hides in plain sight, behind a friendly wave and a suburban porch light. Was this killer simply too arrogant to be caught? Or was his successful, quiet life the perfect cover for a truly evil design? Let me know your thoughts on the power of this new DNA evidence in the comments below. And remember, Sometimes the most dangerous secrets are the ones hidden in plain view. What if I told you that a woman checked into a hospital for a mental breakdown, walked out with her church instead, and never made it out alive? And what if the truth behind her final days was buried under silence, secrecy, and power? This is the story of Lisa McPherson, a woman whose death has haunted the Church of Scientology for nearly 3 decades. She was a devoted follower who trusted the system she believed in, and she needed help. But instead of finding support, she was kept in isolation, and her condition slowly deteriorated. There were no medical records, no family visits, and no independent eyes on her condition. Only a secretive organization with its own rules, and a woman who would never walk out alive. Lisa was born in 1959 and grew up in Texas. She was bright, ambitious, and full of life. In her 20s, she was introduced to Scientology. It was supposed to give her clarity, purpose, and control over her life. And for a while it did. She moved to Clearwater, Florida, where Scientology has one of its biggest headquarters, known as the Flagland Base. Lisa worked for a Scientologist-run company and lived surrounded by the church's influence. But over time, Lisa began showing signs of distress. Some friends said she seemed lost. Others said she was trying harder and harder to meet the church's demanding standards. And by 1995, her mental health started to unravel. It all began on November 18th, 1995. Lisa had been experiencing emotional distress and was already under church guidance at the time. That afternoon, she was involved in a minor car accident. Although the crash itself wasn't serious, what happened next raised alarms. Lisa got out of her car, began undressing in the middle of the street, and told paramedics that she needed help. She was taken to a local hospital for a psychiatric evaluation. Doctors believed she was in the middle of a mental health episode and wanted to keep her overnight. But within just a few hours, representatives from the Church of Scientology arrived. They insisted that Lisa didn't need psychiatric care, and they convinced both her and the doctors to let her leave. Instead of going home, she was taken to the Fort Harrison Hotel, the church's spiritual headquarters in downtown Clearwater. And that was the last time she was seen by anyone outside the church. Inside the hotel, Lisa was placed in complete isolation. This wasn't a medical facility, and it wasn't staffed by licensed professionals. She was entered into something called the Introspection Rundown, a controversial Scientology program meant to handle mental breakdowns without the use of psychiatry. She was kept in a dark room, away from others, and she wasn't allowed to speak or interact. Staff members checked on her around the clock, but none of them were doctors. Over the next 17 days, her health declined rapidly. She stopped eating, became extremely dehydrated, and reportedly started hallucinating. Although some logs indicated that she was being given food and care, autopsy results later told a different story. She had lost a significant amount of weight and was found to have bruises, insect bites, and signs of neglect. On December 5th, 1995, Lisa's condition became critical, and instead of calling 911 or taking her to the nearest hospital, just blocks away, church staff drove her 45 minutes to a different facility, one where they believed doctors would be more sympathetic. But by the time they arrived there, Lisa McPherson was already dead. The medical examiner originally listed her cause of death as a blood clot caused by severe dehydration. Her body showed clear signs of neglect, and an investigation was launched immediately. The Church of Scientology responded with aggressive legal action. They denied all wrongdoing, claimed Lisa had died suddenly of a fast-moving illness, and accused officials of religious persecution. The legal battle lasted for years. At one point, the state of Florida filed felony charges of abuse and practicing medicine without a license. But after a new medical examiner revised the cause of death, those charges were dropped. In 2004, the church settled a wrongful death lawsuit filed by Lisa's family, but the terms were kept confidential. No one was convicted, and Lisa's death was quietly pushed out of the headlines. Although the case was legally closed, many still believe that vital questions were left unanswered. How did a woman under constant watch deteriorate to the point of death? Why was professional medical care never brought in? And if the church did nothing wrong, why did it take years of legal pressure to get any answers? Today, Lisa McPherson is remembered as more than just a former Scientologist. She has become a symbol for those who question the unchecked power of private belief systems. Her case exposed a hidden world that few were allowed to see, and many who spoke out faced legal threats and intimidation. But her story refuses to go away. So here's the question I want to leave you with. How does a healthy woman vanish behind closed doors, and no one is held responsible when she dies? What if I told you a woman predicted her own disappearance and left behind a video in case she never returned? Her name was Susan Powell, a mother of two. She vanished without a trace, and the people closest to her were hiding secrets that would eventually explode into tragedy. This is the story of Susan Powell, a woman who tried to protect her children, who saw the danger coming, and who still wasn't saved. Her case remains one of the most disturbing examples of a slow, visible tragedy, one that unfolded in plain sight while everyone around her kept missing the signs. Susan tried to speak up. She tried to warn people, but in the end, her voice wasn't enough. Susan met Josh Powell in Washington. They connected through church, and for a while, things looked promising. He was confident and charismatic, and Susan believed she had found someone to build a life with. But that life began to crack soon after. Josh controlled the money, monitored Susan's movements, and argued constantly over religion, parenting, and even food. He refused to work consistently, spent recklessly, and created financial stress that never seemed to go away. Susan stayed for the children. She loved her sons deeply and did everything she could to keep their lives stable. But behind her efforts was a growing fear. She told friends she didn't feel safe. She wrote messages and kept records. And eventually, she sat down in front of a camera and recorded a video where she said that if anything happened to her, people should start by looking at her husband. That wasn't a casual statement. It was a warning, and no one realized just how serious it was until it was too late. On the morning of December 7th, 2009, Susan didn't show up to work. Her daycare provider couldn't reach her either. As a result, her friends grew worried, and police were called to check on her. When they entered her home, something felt wrong immediately. Her purse was still on the counter. Her phone and keys hadn't been touched, and two box fans were running in the living room, blowing over a freshly cleaned wet patch on the carpet. Josh and the children were missing. Hours passed before he returned, claiming he had taken their two young sons camping overnight. He said they had left after midnight and spent the night in the freezing Utah desert. Investigators were stunned. The story made no sense. But without a body or clear evidence of a crime, they couldn't arrest him. And then came a statement from one of the boys. He said, "Mommy stayed where the crystals are." No one knew exactly what that meant, but it was unsettling. And it suggested that Susan had not simply walked away. As police began digging deeper, they uncovered things no one had expected. Josh's father, Stephen Powell, had an unhealthy obsession with Susan. He had taken secret videos of her. He had stolen her personal belongings, including her underwear, and he had written journals describing disturbing fantasies. Josh soon moved with his sons to Washington and into Stephen's home. There, surrounded by secrecy and dysfunction, he stopped cooperating with the investigation. Susan was still missing. No new leads emerged, and although suspicion was growing, there was still nothing the police could do to force answers from Josh. Her case went cold, and for years, the silence around her disappearance only deepened. Then, in 2012, everything came to a horrifying end. Josh had been granted a supervised visit with his sons, Charlie and Braden. As they approached the house, the boys ran inside. Josh quickly shut the door behind them, locking out the social worker. And within minutes, the house exploded. Josh had attacked the boys with a hatchet, then doused the home with gasoline and set it on fire. All three died in the explosion. Before doing so, Josh had sent one final email to his attorney. It simply said, "I'm sorry." And just like that, the last person who might have known the truth about Susan was gone. Susan Powell was eventually declared legally dead, but her body has never been found. No one has been charged, and the case remains open. So what really happened to her? Was it a carefully planned murder? Was there help from others in covering it up? And why didn't the system step in when Susan was clearly trying to be heard? She left behind warnings. She begged for help, but nothing happened. And now, 3 lives are gone. So here's the question I want to leave you with. What does it take for someone to be believed before it's too late? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What if I told you that a little boy was found dead in a cardboard box, with no name, no identity, and no one ever came forward to claim him? For more than 65 years, people tried to figure out who he was, but no one could. And when the truth finally emerged, it only raised more questions. This is the haunting mystery of the boy in the box, who was once called America's unknown child. He was a child who was discarded like garbage and left alone in the woods. There were no toys near him, no clothes, and no answers. Only a city full of people who kept asking the same question. Who was this boy? And who could have done something so heartless? It was the afternoon of February 25th, 1957, and the weather in Philadelphia was cold and quiet. In a neighborhood called Fox Chase, a college student was walking through an overgrown area filled with bushes and weeds. He was trying to take a shortcut when he spotted something odd. Lying in the brush was a large cardboard box that looked old and worn. When he went closer, what he found inside would stay with him for the rest of his life. Inside the box was the body of a young boy, estimated to be between 4 and 6 years old. The boy was naked, and he had signs of bruises and injuries all over his body. His hair had been cut recently, but it looked uneven and rushed. His small frame suggested he had been malnourished. Police arrived quickly and studied everything around the scene. The box had originally contained a baby bassinet sold at JCPenney, and the boy had been wrapped in a flannel blanket. He had been placed carefully inside, which hinted that someone knew exactly what they were doing. But there were no fingerprints. There was no identification, and no one had reported a missing child who matched his description. The news spread rapidly, and the people of Philadelphia were horrified. Posters with the boy's face were put up all over the city. They were hung in shop windows, mailed with gas bills, and posted on bulletin boards. The police tried everything they could. They took the boy's fingerprints and footprints, and they even tried to reconstruct what he might have looked like alive. More than 400,000 flyers were distributed across the country, but no one came forward. No family, no neighbors, no one at all. That silence led investigators to consider more disturbing possibilities. Some believed the boy had been raised in isolation, or even kept hidden his entire life. Over time, a few major theories emerged. One of them pointed to a foster home that was located nearby. A psychic had led the police there, and they did find a similar bassinet and blankets at the home. But in the end, there was no solid evidence to prove the boy had ever lived there. In 2002, a woman known only as Am came forward with a deeply unsettling story. She claimed that her mother had purchased a young boy and kept him hidden in the basement for years. According to her, the child was abused regularly and was eventually killed after he vomited during a bath. She said his name was Jonathan. Although her story matched certain details of the case, there was no physical evidence to back it up. So once again, the trail went cold. The boy was buried under a gravestone that simply read, "Heavenly Father, bless this unknown boy." By the time forensic technology advanced in the early 2000s, the boy's remains were exhumed to collect DNA. At first, the results didn't lead anywhere, but investigators remained hopeful. In 2019, a new method called genetic genealogy was used. This technique involved tracing distant family members by uploading DNA to public databases. Bit by bit, they began piecing together a family tree. It took years, but eventually, the connection started forming. And then, in December 2022, the mystery finally broke. After 65 years, the boy in the box was identified as Joseph Augustus Orelli, who had been born on January 13, 1953. He was just 4 years old when he died. Investigators tracked down both of his biological parents. Although they were not publicly named, authorities confirmed that Joseph came from a well-known family in the area. But even after learning his name, the case was far from over. No one has been arrested, and there are still no clear answers about how Joseph died or who was responsible for his death. Today, Joseph finally has a name on his gravestone. He is no longer just a boy in the box. He is Joseph Augustus Sorelli, and his story is being told once again. But the mystery remains. What really happened to Joseph? Why was he never reported missing? And why did no one step forward in all those years? Some believe he was the victim of abuse. Others think he may have been part of a hidden family secret that no one wanted exposed. The truth is still buried beneath layers of silence. But here's the question I want to leave you with. How does a child go missing and no one even notices he is gone?
What if I told you that someone can vanish from a massive cruise ship while surrounded by thousands of people? And even after decades of searching, sightings, photographs, and desperate family investigations, the world still has no idea where she went. What if I told you that this mystery includes possible human trafficking, ignored warnings, shocking eyewitnesses, and a chilling photo that might show Amy trapped in a life she never chose? This is the disappearance of Amy Lynn Bradley, and although it happened in 1998, the story still haunts everyone who hears it. Amy Bradley was a bright, athletic, confident 23-year-old woman from Virginia. She was close to her family, and they decided to take a vacation together on a Royal Caribbean cruise ship called the Rhapsody of the Seas. It was supposed to be a simple family trip before Amy started a new chapter of her life. Her parents later said she was excited but also cautious. She was a strong swimmer, very aware of her surroundings, and not the type to suddenly disappear. The vacation began smoothly, and the Bradleys enjoyed the ship like everyone else. But on the night of March 23rd, something strange happened. Amy had been hanging out at the ship's nightclub where a band called Blue Orchid was performing. One of the band members was seen dancing closely with her, and he would later become a strange part of the story. Later, around 4:30 in the morning, Amy's father Ron woke up and noticed Amy sitting on the balcony of their cabin. She looked calm and relaxed, and Ron went back to sleep. But when he woke up again around 6, she was gone. Her shoes, her cigarettes, and her belongings were still there. But Amy was missing. The ship was preparing to dock in Curacao that morning, and most passengers were waking up. Amy's family panicked and begged the crew to make an announcement or lock down the ship. But the crew refused. They said they did not want to disturb guests or cause unnecessary panic. This decision would become one of the biggest mistakes in the entire case, because hundreds of passengers were allowed to walk off the ship before a proper search began. And if someone had taken Amy, then they had all the time in the world to leave the ship unnoticed. The ship's basic search found nothing. No one knew whether Amy had fallen, left on her own, or been taken. But Amy was a trained lifeguard and a strong swimmer. Her parents insisted she would never go near the railings recklessly. And without her shoes or cigarettes, she had no reason to leave. The Coast Guard was contacted, and helicopters circled the area looking for any sign of Amy. But nothing was found in the waters. Authorities also questioned the staff and crew, but there were strange delays and very inconsistent stories. The band member who danced with Amy also gave confusing statements. Additionally, the family reported that several male crew members had made inappropriate comments to Amy earlier in the trip. Her mother said that some of them stared at Amy like they already knew something. And although the investigation eventually involved the FBI, the early mistakes badly damaged the chances of finding her quickly. With time, the story becomes even more disturbing. A few months after the disappearance, 2 Canadian tourists claimed they saw a woman in Curacao who looked exactly like Amy. The woman was with 2 men, and she seemed unable to speak freely. And when the tourists tried to approach, the men quickly pulled her away. Years later, a member of the Navy reported seeing a woman in a brothel in Curacao who said she was Amy Bradley and begged him to help her. He said she looked terrified, and she was rushed away before he could even react. But the most chilling moment came in 2005. A photograph surfaced on a sex trafficking website showing a woman known only as Jazz. She was lying on a bed, wearing lingerie, and staring directly into the camera. When experts compared the photo with Amy's, the resemblance was undeniable. The shape of the jaw, the eyes, the eyebrows, the facial structure. Everything matched. And even Amy's parents later said, it looked exactly like her. Although many sightings were reported, the case kept hitting barriers. Authorities were limited, evidence was lost, and the cruise line kept quiet about many details. As a result, theories began to grow. One theory suggests that Amy was targeted by traffickers on board the ship and taken the moment the ship docked. Another theory suggests she was drugged or forced off the ship without resistance. Some also believe that crew members may have been involved. And although nothing is proven, the number of later sightings and the disturbing photo point strongly toward human trafficking. Amy's family always believed she was taken. They never believed she fell or left on her own, because nothing about her actions that night suggested she planned to go anywhere. Amy's parents never stopped searching for her. They traveled to islands, hired private investigators, and followed every tip. They even appeared on national television begging for answers. Their pain was deep and constant, and they always said that they felt Amy could still be alive somewhere. Today, the case remains open. There are no official answers, no confirmed evidence, and no closure. But the sightings keep the hope alive that Amy was not lost at sea. She might be out there, waiting for someone to finally bring her home. The disappearance of Amy Bradley is one of the most haunting mysteries in modern history. It raises painful questions about safety, responsibility, and how someone can vanish while surrounded by people. Her story reminds us that not every missing person case fades away. Some stay alive through memories, sightings, and the determination of those who refuse to give up. If you have any information about the disappearance of Amy Lynn Bradley, contact the appropriate authorities. And always remember, someone out there knows exactly what happened that morning. What if I told you that one of the most infamous serial killers in American history was never caught? What if I told you he didn't hide in the shadows, but communicated directly with the press, taunting law enforcement with cryptic codes and promising more death? This is the story of a monster who called himself the Zodiac, a killer who terrorized Northern California, forever changing the way we look over our shoulder. Our story begins on a dark night in Vallejo, California, specifically on December 20th, 1968. The victims, 17-year-old David Faraday and 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen, who were spending time together on their first date, parked on a lonely stretch of road known as Lake Herman Road. An unidentified vehicle pulled up next to them, and moments later, gunshots rang out. David was tragically shot in the head, and Betty Lou was found yards away, shot 5 times in the back as she desperately tried to flee. This was the Zodiac's first confirmed attack, a brutal, seemingly random act of violence. But the crime scene offered few clues, and the case quickly stalled because no one knew what was coming next. 6 months later, the Zodiac struck again, this time with a chilling, brazen twist in the Blue Rock Springs golf course parking lot, also in Vallejo, on July 4th, 1969. Darlene Farron and Mike Mageau were quietly parked when a lone car pulled up and intentionally blocked their exit, trapping them. A man with a flashlight then calmly approached the vehicle, proceeding to fire multiple shots at the couple. Darlene Farron was tragically killed, while Mike Mageau miraculously survived the attack, wounded, but able to provide law enforcement with some information. He provided the police with a detailed physical description of the assailant, a stocky white male in his late 20s or early 30s. This testimony established the first physical profile of the Zodiac killer. But the true terror, the moment the case shifted from local murder to national obsession, began the very next day, when the killer called the Vallejo Police Department, chillingly confessing to both the Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs murders, confirming that the case was no longer just a crime, but a calculated conversation. And then came the letters, starting in August 1969, when 3 major newspapers, the Vallejo Times-Herald, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the San Francisco Examiner, all received nearly identical letters from the self-proclaimed killer, who aggressively demanded they be printed on the front page, threatening to cruise around killing all weekend long if his instructions were ignored. Each terrifying letter contained one-third of a cipher, a complex, coded message the writer chillingly claimed contained his identity, making this the killer's first great taunt to the public and the police. The cipher, a seemingly random string of symbols, was solved within days by a schoolteacher named Donald Harden and his wife, Betty, but it didn't reveal his name. Instead, it confirmed his horrifying motive, stating in part, "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of all." He signed the letter with a cross-circle symbol, the unique emblem he would use for all future communication, the Zodiac. The Zodiac, having successfully gained the intense media attention he craved, quickly became bolder, targeting Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard on September 27, 1969, as they enjoyed a picnic near Lake Berryessa in Napa County. A man approached the young couple wearing a terrifying, elaborate hooded costume, a black fabric hood emblazoned with the cross-circle symbol, sewn onto the chest, before he methodically tied them up, proceeding to stab them repeatedly with a large hunting knife. Before calmly departing the scene, the killer walked to Hartnell's car and, in a gesture of pure arrogance, wrote a message on the door documenting his previous attacks. He then made a separate, chilling phone call to the Napa County Sheriff's Office, directing them to the scene of his latest outrage. Cecilia Shepard tragically died 2 days later, but Brian Hartnell survived and gave authorities a detailed account of the terrifying attack. The fourth confirmed attack, demonstrating an even greater level of recklessness, occurred on October 11, 1969, when a taxi driver named Paul Stein picked up a fare in downtown San Francisco, only to be shot point-blank in the head upon reaching the destination, marking the killer's first murder within the city limits. Crucially, a key piece of bloody evidence was left at the scene, a piece of Stein's blood-stained shirt, which the killer sent to the San Francisco Chronicle along with a letter, terrifyingly threatening to shoot out the tires of a school bus and systematically kill the children as they disembarked. The Zodiac had now claimed 5 lives and wounded 2 others in 3 different counties, proving himself to be elusive, theatrical, and utterly terrifying. Following the highly public Paul Stein murder, the flood of communication from the Zodiac continued aggressively, but his actual physical attacks on victims became noticeably less frequent, eventually stopping entirely. Over the next few years, he tormented the public and the police by sending more letters and complex ciphers, continuing his pattern of unsettling correspondence. The 340 cipher, a notorious message sent in November 1969, proved to be an agonizing and persistent challenge for authorities, ultimately remaining officially unsolved for a remarkable 51 years, until it was finally cracked in 2020 by a determined team of civilian codebreakers. However, like the first encoded message, this cipher tragically failed to reveal the killer's name, instead containing more of his chilling, arrogant rhetoric directed at the police. He also sent another cryptic message known as the Zodiac Killer Map, a code that, to this day, remains officially unsolved and holds the tantalizing possibility of revealing his true identity. The total confirmed count of Zodiac victims remains 5, though the killer frequently and chillingly boasted of many more, claiming responsibility for up to 37 murders. Law enforcement across multiple jurisdictions investigated numerous possible victims, but the definite, confirmed paper trail of authentic Zodiac activity definitively ends with a letter dated March 1971. For a time, the letters continued sporadically over the following decade, with the last communication considered truly credible sent in 1974. After that final taunt, the Zodiac simply vanished, becoming a true, unsolved specter of California history. Decades of intense investigation have focused on various suspects, the most publicly discussed being Arthur Lee Allen, a known child molester and registered felon. He matched some early witness descriptions, was known to wear the Zodiac brand watch, and lived in the areas of the attacks. However, fingerprints, palm prints, and DNA evidence never provided a conclusive match to confirm him as the killer. Other theories have pointed to various individuals over the years, but the one persistent, haunting fact remains. The Zodiac killer was never officially identified, charged, or apprehended. The case fundamentally exposed the fragmented nature of law enforcement across different jurisdictions and proved how a killer using rudimentary tools like letters and codes could paralyze a major American city. The Zodiac's actions created a mystery that continues to haunt us, and his identity is buried in those unsolved codes, in the memories of the survivors, and in the sheer audacity of his crimes. And though the confirmed Zodiac case file is decades old, the investigation itself remains officially open, leaving a persistent scar in the history of American true crime. He became a ghost, vanishing into the fabric of society after his final credible communication. Do you believe the Zodiac simply stopped killing, retiring from his reign of terror? Or do you believe his name is still, somehow, truly hidden within one of his unsolved ciphers? Share your theories, your insights, and your conclusions about the identity of the Zodiac killer in the comments below.